episode 29. Today we're going to talk about Disney Cruise Line 2027 and why you really shouldn't wait to plan. Hi, welcome to the continuing adventures of Two Gray Mice. I'm Meg.
And I'm Rob.
And we are Two Gray Mice. Well, folks, it's just me. It's Rob's week off, and we're going to talk, like I said, a little bit about Disney Cruise Line, a little bit about Universal's Mardi Gras, which started this week. And first, I'm going to take you back in time a little bit in my own life, but also current history with Disney Plus. This week, or maybe it was even last week, I think, Disney Plus started or has a pilot out there for the Muppet Show again. Muppet Show was on in the 80s. Not really sure, actually. Great show. I remember watching it every week with my parents, loving it, truly enjoying it, and all the guest stars. Now, I personally have a little bit of 6 degrees of separation with the Muppets. So they've always kind of meant something to me. I remember my dad, who worked for ABC Television, was a stage manager before I was born. On a show called the Jimmy Dean Show, the sausage guy. Back then, he was a country singer. And the Jimmy Dean Show was actually the first time the nation as a whole kind of saw the Muppets. On the Jimmy Dean Show, he had a piano-playing bear, his good old boy, and it was Rolf. So with Rolf, of course, came Jim Henson. I think it's also during this time that Frank Oz joined Jim a little bit. I think fresh out of high school, but I'm not really sure. But anyway, my dad remembers loving working with Jim and then having conversations with Rolf. Like they'd be between takes or between shows or rehearsals. And Rolf would talk to him and he'd talk back. And he's like, I'm talking to a stuffed picture. But it was so real, you kind of got into it. And I just, of course, as a kid, thought that was wonderful that my dad knew Jim Henson. Because I am the original Sesame Street crew. I'm a Gen Xer, so we are the people that were raised on Sesame Street. Moving forward several years, I got married to my husband and met a wonderful human being, absolutely wonderful human being, Jane Hunt, who worked with us at a community theater that we still attend, called Elmwood Playhouse in Nyack, New York. And Jane Hunt unfortunately actually, I guess so still is, Richard Hunt's mom. Richard Hunt joined Jim and Frank and the rest of the crew, I think, in like the early 70s and worked with them until he passed in 1992. So unfortunately, we met Jane right when she lost her son. Richard was Sweetums, Statler, one of the two old men, Jane, the guitar player, and several other Muppets, Beaker, very different personalities too. So once again, the Muppets were kind of back into my life. There was another 6 degrees with Jane, and my dad actually, but that's a different story. And later on, one of my bosses also knew Richard Hunt. So it's just like every time I turn around, the Muppets are kind of right there in front of me. And when I saw this new show and I watched it and it was wonderful, and Sabrina Carpenter was wonderful in it, it's just brought all that back. And I just hope that the 9 of you that are out there listening to this, please watch the show. It's a great show. Let's get Disney to realize this pilot is a success and to bring back the show. Because it's worth it. It's just a great show. And they also need to bring the Muppets back into the parks in a bigger way than just rock and roller coaster. But I digress. Okay. On to the news. So this week, Disney Cruise Line dropped the 2027 itineraries. Summer 2027 itineraries. So I know a lot of you are going, but Meg, I haven't even figured out what I'm doing for the summer of 26. How am I going to plan for the summer of 27? If you want to cruise, unfortunately, it's a long distance planning kind of thing. You want to book the cruises in whatever cruise line you're looking at as soon as they come out. The cheapest prices you're going to get are usually when they're released. And this is because it's a supply and demand system. Ship is only so big, only so many people can fit on it in that week, in that 3 days or 4 days or 7 days, however long the cruise is. So the staterooms fill up quickly. First, the mid-priced verandas go and the lowest prices go. And after a while, what's left is inside cabins and your suites. So the prices keep going up as the supply goes down and down. Now, of course, this is not always the case. There are some weeks in the year that cruises don't sell, and you can always get a better price, but it's always worth booking as soon as you think you know when you want to go. That way, you can always adjust the price if a sale comes out. You can't adjust the price to what it was last week, but you can adjust last week's price to this week's price if it's less. So just something to think about. In this drop of 2027 in their deployment schedule, they've kind of moved things around a little bit, not too much. It's still pretty much the same itineraries, the same places. They have a few more places in Europe they're going to go to. But they've moved a couple of ships around in location. So it's going to be a little interesting, but we'll see. The Disney Wish. Disney Wish currently and through summer 2027 is doing 3 and 4 night cruises out of Port Canaveral in Florida. These go to the Caribbean, pretty much the Bahamas. So like the cruise I'm taking, it's to Nassau and then it's to Castaway Cay. Some of them are to Lookout Point and Castaway Cay. Some of them are to Nassau and then Lookout Point. But for the most part, that's it. That's what Disney Wish is doing. But in 2027, instead of sending the Fantasy or one of the older ships over to Europe, they're sending the Wish. And it's going to be hitting new ports like Croatia, a small town outside of Venice that I can't pronounce, Norway. It's kind of cool. So these are cruises that are usually a little longer in length. The stops are more interesting. They're stops in which you want to get off the ship and see the world. And ships like the Wish, which have so much to do on board, are very often the ones that are in the Caribbean because if you don't get off, you don't get off, and there's so much to do on board. But the European cruises, especially the longer ones, very often have sea days and more sea days. So that's something to look forward to. And also something to look at if you ever wanted to take a transatlantic cruise is that the Wish is going to have to get there. And very often transatlantic cruises or excuse me, repositioning cruises, as I like to say, are less expensive than you would think they should be. So like the 7-day cruise or 8-day cruise, however long they're going to take to go from Port Canaveral over to Europe is going to be slightly less expensive because basically they're just trying to put people on board the ship while they move it to its new port. That's going to be the same when you're talking about the West Coast ships when they go from San Diego up to Alaska. It's going to be the same when they go from Galveston through the Panama Canal to San Diego up to Alaska. The Panama Canal cruise, though it is repositioning cruise, is never less expensive because it's the Panama Canal and everybody wants to try that cruise. So, as I was saying, Disney Wish is going to Europe. Leaving the Disney Treasure in Port Canaveral and the Disney Destiny, its two sister ships. Destiny is in Fort Lauderdale. Treasure was going to keep doing 7-night cruises, and the Destiny is going to keep doing, I think it's 5-night cruises, 4 and 5-night cruises out of Fort Lauderdale. Great port, by the way. And it's not difficult to fly into Miami, Fort Lauderdale, or Orlando and take the Bright Line to get there. So don't forget about the Fort Lauderdale cruise terminal when you're looking at any cruise line. They will be returning to Alaska, of course. The Disney Magic and the Disney Wonder will be going to Alaska, which is kind of cool. They'll have 2 ships up there that will allow more cruises to happen. Alaska is a huge place that people want to go to. I am personally going there on Virgin Voyages this coming summer. I cannot wait. It is the last great frontier, as I like to say. I want to see it while it still has ice. It is the largest temperate rainforest. And that's basically the area that you're cruising in from Disney starts in Vancouver and goes up to, and I can't remember what the northernmost town is, Juneau, I think, and then back down again. For the most part, there's 7-night sailings, which is like kind of the sweet spot for Alaska sailings. There are a few shorter and there's a couple longer, just in case you wanted to see it. But, it's the summertime, so it's May through September. That's when all the orcas are there. All the humpback whales are there. It's when the seals are there. It's when the brown bears and black bears are active. It's when all the salmon are coming in. So it's the time to go. It's also when the sun is up the most, when it's going to be the best weather. And it's not frozen, so you can go. Having 2 ships up there gives them more flexibility and how they can do it. And especially since the season is so short in many ways for cruising in Alaska. Because I've had people ask me, really, you don't want to go to Alaska in January. You have great excursions from dog sledding to Gold Rush to the Great Lumberjack Show. A lot of the same ones if you listen to last week's episode when we were talking about Virgin Voyages. Virgin has kind of tweaked them a little bit and made them a little more special, but very similar from cruise line to cruise line on what you can see and can do in Alaska, though each cruise line is probably going to have exclusive trips, short trips that you're going to be able to do. The Disney Dream and Disney Treasure will be sailing out of Port Canaveral now. So instead of Wish and Treasure, it's going to be the Dream and the Treasure. Doing Eastern and Western Caribbean, and I believe the Dream's going to be doing the 3 and 4 nights that Wish was doing, including Castaway Cay and Lookout Cay at Lighthouse Point. The newest ship, the Disney Adventure, which is currently, as I'm saying this, docked in LA, and the people who have been on it have been amazed. It's huge because this was originally not built for Disney. It was originally built for the Asian market, which is where it's going. And it's got several entertainment venues, and it's going to have a huge show in it. And I haven't looked completely into it because it is going out of Singapore and only Singapore, and it's doing 3 and 4 night trips out into the ocean and back to Singapore. So there's no shore excursions. It's just the boat. So this boat has to have lots of things to do to keep 6,000 people busy and entertained for 4 days. So from what I understand, it's amazing, and Disney Live Entertainment has done an amazing job in creating the ship and the interior of the ship and everything that's going to go. If you are interested, really, it doesn't really matter what cruise line you're interested in. You should always try to book it, like I said, when it come out. If you can't, then now is the time to book it. There's something called wave season. And now is when most people book their vacations for the following summer or the summer after that, in the case of cruise lines. So this is when you're going to get discounts from most cruise lines. And on top of that, most all-inclusives and most theme parks and yada, yada, yada. So right now, Disney Wish and the Fantasy, I could be lying, are offering 20% off their cruises. Certain cruises, certain days, pretty much in the springtime, going a little bit into the summer. Something Disney rarely does. So obviously these are cruises, these specific cruises, because they're specific ones and specific dates, are not selling. So if you ever thought about taking a Disney cruise and you are a last minute planner, like unfortunately very often myself, this is something to think about because they're happening this spring. So give me a call if that's what you're thinking about. And then the other ones that are happening, like Viking has a 30% off sale right now. Norwegian Cruise Line has a sale for 80% off your second guest. Virgin Voyages has one that's 80% off your second guest. So it's always a little something's going on out there during this time of year. So it's a great time if you haven't booked your cruise yet to look at it and think about booking if you didn't book when it was released, book now between mid-January and mid-February, tail end of February. That's when all your cruise sales are going to be happening. But try to book ahead. Don't be me. I remember when the kids were little, you're an exhausted parent and you're trying to book, you're thinking about vacation and you want to go someplace, but you're also dealing with after school activities and homework and your job and it keeps getting pushed into the back burner. And I remember trying to get a house on LBI. We didn't have a great deal of money, so I had a very restricted budget. That was probably in the mid-range of LBI houses to rent for a week. LBI would be Long Beach Island off the coast of New Jersey. And I would wait so long that by the time I looked at it, the only thing that would be available were the ones that were $5,000 a week or the ones that were really cheap because they were 3 miles away from the ocean and we would have to drive out there and pay for parking and yada, yada. And I didn't want to do that. So we would end up not going, taking weekend trips here and there, spending a week with my parents because they kind of live down there, instead of truly taking a vacation. This is one of the reasons why I became a travel advisor, to help people who you don't have the time. You don't have the time. Who has the time to plan travel? It's a lot. So think about it. And cruises, Alaska, you can join us on Virgin Voyages if you want to, but Disney Cruise Line, it's wonderful, especially if you have children, because you can actually get quality alone time as an adult on a Disney Cruise Line because your kids are going to fall in love with the kids clubs on Disney Cruise Line. They are simply going to fall in love with these kids clubs. No doubt. Now let's switch to something that's happening right now as we speak. But same thing. You should really know when I talk about Mardi Gras at Universal Orlando Resort that this happens every year. So this time next year, this will also be happening. So it's a great time to look at next year. Universal Orlando has a special out right now for 30% off their rooms. A flexible scale between, the most expensive and the least expensive. The other thing to keep in mind when you're doing Universal Mardi Gras, or actually going to Universal at all, is of course they have new hotels. They have several hotels. They're run by Lowe's. The hotels are absolutely wonderful. Beautiful, great theming, not themed like Disney's theme. So they aren't themed to the theme parks. They're themed in their own way. So you have the Hard Rock Hotel, the Royal Pacific Hotel, and Portofino Bay. Those are their deluxe hotels. And with those 3 deluxe hotels, that you get Express Pass with your stay. So the Express Pass allows you to go on the rides in the express lane as often as you want to during your stay. It's a more expensive system if you buy it on its own for each person in your group. So very often, if you have, especially a family of 4, it might be cheaper to stay at Hard Rock and get the Express Pass that comes free with it than to stay at Cabana Bay and get the Express Pass. The other deluxe resort is the new one over at Epcot, but that does not come with Express Pass. Stella Nova and Luna are the 2 medium-ranged hotels over there. Then you have Sapphire Falls, which isn't a deluxe and isn't a medium. It's kind of in the middle. They have great boat transportation, by the way, to the parks, which is wonderful, as well as bus. Then you have Cabana Bay and Adventura, which are 2 cute little hotels. I love Cabana Bay. It's actually physically attached to Volcano Bay. So if the water park is on your list, that's a perfect hotel for you. And the last ones are Endless Summer, which are across the street from each other, Surfside and the other side. Sorry, I didn't write that down, and sometimes my mind is a terrible place. So those are wonderful places to stay and to be close to the park so you don't have to worry about it, especially now that Universal is truly more than a 1-day park or a 2-day park. Me and Rob will very often do a split stay. We'll do 3 days at Universal and stay, and then we'll transfer hotels down to Disney. That's totally up to you. These days, our last trip, actually, when we went down for Universal, we stayed at Universal for the entire week. We didn't transfer at all, and it was wonderful. Universal Mardi Gras is a wonderful event. If you love Mardi Gras, but New Orleans or going to one of the great South American countries is just not in the cards, it's not a traditional Mardi Gras. It's not going to be the craziness on the streets of Bourbon Street and heavy drinking and everything like that. But it's going to give you a nice flavor and a nice flair of what Mardi Gras is, and a kind of sampling of all the food that you can find in a lot of these places that do truly celebrate the traditional Mardi Gras. So what they have is international food booths. Puerto Rico, of course, it's not international, but Brazil, Mexico, all the places that do serve. They also have like China and other places. Not quite Mardi Gras to me, but okay. Great food. Kind of like Food and Wine at Disney. A few less food booths, but the food in these food booths each year has been getting better and better, and their specialty drinks have been getting better and better, which is really quite cool. So you can spend your day eating around Universal Studios, which is where this takes place. So Universal Orlando Resort has the two OG parks, Islands of Adventure and Universal Studios. The Mardi Gras is in Universal Studios. It's included with your ticket. There is nothing more like Halloween Horror Nights. It's an extra ticket you have to pay for. Everything I'm talking about comes with your admission ticket. They have live concerts on most Saturday nights, and I think a couple other nights of the week. Plain White Tees, some new up-and-comers, some people that we all heard of in the 90s and 80s and early 2000s and want to go see. Joey Fatone and one of the guys from one of the other boy bands. Just a fun environment, and their big amphitheater they have, so there's no seating. You're just going to listen to it, and you don't have to be in the event to listen, which is nice. Unlike Disney, where you very often want to get seats and dining plans and all that other stuff. They have this awesome parade that happens every evening, sometimes twice at night. It's a Mardi Gras parade, huge floats, decorative, wonderful cast members dancing and singing along with these floats. And average humans, guest goers like me and you, are on the floats throwing beads. Just like you see in Bourbon Street, they're throwing the beads. The kids are going crazy for the beads. They got 10 millions of them on. I always try to catch the beads. I bring home like 2 strands, and then I give the rest to whatever small child is just caught my eye while I was catching beads too. You got to be careful though. You got to keep your mind looking, because otherwise you get beamed by a bead. And it's just a fun environment to be in, and kind of has that Mardi Gras spirit. You can also, how to get on a float is they very often have a virtual queue when you get there. It goes very quickly. But the easiest way to do it is they have a float and dine. So you can get dinner reservations, and you go and eat dinner, and it gets you on the float. Reservations go quickly. So you need to kind of think about that and jump on it. If you want to do that, maybe next year. But this year, there's plenty of hotel reservations to go down and just a long weekend or a week, whatever, because Universal Studios is no longer a 2-day trip between Universal Studios, Island Adventure, Epic, and Volcano Bay. You could easily spend an entire week doing Universal Orlando Resort. The cool thing they have is they have a special gift card. It's $65, and you get $75 worth of money on the gift card. And it's good for food and beverages anywhere on Universal property in the parks. So it's good at Universal Studios, it's good at Islands Adventure, it's good at Epic. So let's say you buy 2 and you only spend $75, you still have the other one. Well, tomorrow you're going to be in Islands or you're going to be in Epic, you can still use it and it doesn't expire. So a lot of the pass holders will buy several of these because they'll use them for Halloween and Horror Nights, and they'll just keep using them until the end of the year. It's a wonderful way of saving $10 on food, which $75 is going to go pretty quickly on food if you're a family of 4. So you pick up a couple, you end up saving $10, $20, $30, $40. It's great. So that's all I've got for today. Next week, Rob and I will be talking about the International Flower and Garden Show at Epcot, which is something that will be happening in March. and again next March. So once again, try to plan early. Don't pull a Meg and wait until the last minute. I don't do that with my clients, but with my own vacations, I'm not very good. To be exact, I have no idea if we're going on vacation this summer. Well, actually, besides the trip. I meant spring. Should I go on vacation in the spring? Probably. I hope you guys have a great week. Talk to you next week. And that's it. I'm Meg. I am one of two gray mice. Please like and review this podcast wherever you're listening to it. You can follow us on Instagram at the number 2 gray mouse, 2 gray mice podcast. And if you have any questions, you can send us an email at the number 2 gray mice at gmail.com. Thanks, folks. Have a great day. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Adventures of Two Gray Mice. We would love it if you could please leave us a rating or review wherever you listen to this podcast. For all your vacation needs at Disney, Universal, or cruise lines, please reach out to Meg at meganthemouse.com. Have a great week.